It became a fight of just surviving. And that's what I think hyperemesis gravidarum is for somebody that does go through it. You're just trying to survive and make it through. And I know when you're in the midst of it, you think, oh my God, how am I going to get through one more week of this? How am I going to get through another month of this? Oh wow, I have 9 months of this. How do I get through? And you just have to. Hi everyone, I know you haven't heard from me in a really long time. I haven't been uploading videos, and the reason is going through a very difficult pregnancy, and I had hyperemesis gravidarum, which is an extreme form of nausea and vomiting in pregnancy that happens all day long. It is a rare disorder that occurs in some pregnancies, and it is a debilitating illness. It makes it where you cannot function. You can't do things that are normal in your day-to-day life. Simple things like brushing your hair, brushing your teeth, taking a shower, standing up for longer than maybe a minute. These are things that are normal, but not when you have hyperemesis gravidarum. Things that you take for granted in everyday life suddenly change and become not normal for you, and you aren't able to function. It is an all-encompassing disorder, meaning you feel it in your body, you feel it in your brain, you feel it in your emotions. You literally cannot function, not like you normally used to. Taking a shower now suddenly becomes hard. Surprisingly, and I know that many of you won't be able to relate to this, but even brushing your hair, something that literally you just go like this and you brush. No, not when you have hyperemesis gravidarum. That becomes one of the most challenging tasks. And then if you don't brush your hair for a long time, you get knots and you just don't have the energy to actually brush it out. If I was able to leave the house when I had hyperemesis gravidarum, I probably would have cut most of my hair off because I just could not manage it. First, I want to go into having a fourth child. So after I had Diana, that was my third baby, she was an absolute delight. She still is an absolute delight. She is an amazing child. She adds so much sunshine and color and flavor to our life. And after we had her, it was always hard to be like, oh, that's the last time I'm going to be breastfeeding. And that's the last time I'm going to do this. And the things that she says, we weren't ready to move to that next stage. And so I've been talking to my husband for the last literally 2 years about having a fourth baby and telling him that, this is something that I want. I like a big family. I want a house filled with children's laughter and children singing and children talking. But I also have really, really difficult pregnancies. And it is literally a fight of my life to bring them here. And it's not just a weight on me, it's also a weight on him. Because whatever I can't do now suddenly becomes something he has to do. And he'd been needing to take care of me, taking care of my kids, taking care of the household, feeding the kids. It literally is all on him. And the only thing that we could kind of cling to was, oh, maybe I'm older, maybe I live in a different country now, and maybe the water is different here. We looked for any kind of hope on it being easier the next time. And I always go into my pregnancies hoping and praying that, maybe this is going to be the pregnancy that I won't have hyperemesis. I did have hyperemesis in all my pregnancies, but they got progressively worse. Deanna's pregnancy was really bad. That was my third pregnancy. And I remember I literally just sat by that toilet seat most of the day. With Elena, though, this is my fourth pregnancy, I never really got relief. And I also feel like I wasn't as cared for by my doctors as I was with my doctor in South Africa. And that's just because healthcare in America is different. You're not getting that personalized service. You're not seeing the same doctor every time. Your doctor's kind of busy. Whereas in South Africa, you pick up the phone and you call your doctor. She knows your history. So it's easier to get help. And if you're feeling dehydrated, you can call your doctor in South Africa and say, I'm so dehydrated, I'm throwing up and I can't keep anything down. And they will easily, without a problem, give you an IV drip to help replenish you. They could even do it in office. But try to do that in America, they're not going to do that. They need to get permission from insurance, and there's all these different steps in order for you to get the care that you need. I really wanted to film this video during my pregnancy because that would probably have given you the best indication and understanding of what I was going through, but I just couldn't. I could barely string many words together. It was really, really, really hard. I was able to do a blog post, which I will link in the description box below, which does give you kind of a little more information on how it felt and what it was like to go through hyperemesis. Knowing that having another baby would be putting a lot of work onto my husband, we eventually got to the decision that, you know what, as much as we want it, we're just not in a stage of life where we can have another baby. And then the pandemic hit. And when the pandemic hit, my husband was at home all the time, the kids were at home, everybody was home. So in some ways my responsibility kind of went up, but then in other ways it kind of went down because my husband was more available and he was more able to help. June, I found out I was pregnant. We decided kind of to have another one in May. And by that first month, we were pregnant and, you know, we were so excited. I was so happy and so excited to have another one. My kids were excited. You know, normally you don't really tell your kids immediately when you find out you're having a baby because, you know, that first trimester is kind of iffy and kind of scary. But in my case, I wasn't going to be able to do that because I know how difficult my pregnancies are. And immediately when that nausea hits, I do get to a point where I'm just gone. And my kids needed to kind of be aware of that. I wouldn't be able to tell them in the way that I wanted to that I was pregnant. So as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I confirmed with the blood test. I always do a blood test to confirm my pregnancies and kind of watch my HCG levels. And at that point, I told my kids that we were expecting another baby. They were so happy and so excited, and I tried my best in those next few days to spend as much time with them as I could. I also tried to explain to them, you know, how my pregnancies generally are, and in the event that something like, you know, that it does end up being difficult for me, that I would need their support. So the first few days I was really strong, and around 5 weeks, I was happy. I was excited. I was thinking, oh my God, it's not coming. 5 weeks hit and I'm not nauseous and I'm feeling like normal. And I think I like danced around because I was so happy that maybe this was the pregnancy that I wouldn't have hyperemesis. I figured if I could get like a desk for the bed, you know, just for that first trimester, then I'd continue to be able to do blog posts. Then 5 weeks and 1 day hit, and I woke up that morning completely different. I felt so nauseous. It hits you like a ton of bricks, and you realize that you can no longer do the things you're used to. You can barely bend down. Going to the bathroom is weird. You feel like throwing up. I tell my husband, hyperemesis gravidarum during pregnancy, you feel like you're walking around and you feel like death. You feel like you're walking around dead. And everything, just your mouth tastes bad. Everything about you tastes bad. When my kids came to me a few times, they smelled like what I could describe as, they smelled like flesh. And that was so hard because when you start feeling this nausea, you start feeling really lonely and you feel like no one understands, and you can't even get that cuddle from your child that you're used to getting every single night because now suddenly your child smells like flesh. And I know people think, oh, that's an exaggeration. Flesh smells terrible, and I never knew flesh had a smell until I was pregnant, and it's something that I had in my other pregnancies as well. Around 6 weeks, I could no longer drink any water. That was hard because it was really hot. We were in the middle of summer, and you know, when I was planning my pregnancy, I thought, oh great, you know, I won't have my third trimester in the heat of summer, but I forgot about the fact that I can't drink water normally for a few weeks in my pregnancy. So as much as I tried to get water down, every time I'd drink it, I'd throw up. So eventually, even just like looking at the water and trying to take it to my lips, it wouldn't work. Ice worked for like a very short while, and then ice started making me feel sick. And I started to feel extremely dehydrated. I'd see my husband at night drinking water. He'd, you know, guzzle down a whole bottle of water, and I'm sitting there like, wow, I'm so thirsty. I really, like, you know, there were times where I felt like that I wouldn't get through the night because I was so dehydrated. And it wasn't that I wasn't thirsty. I was so thirsty. So what was helping me, the only drink that I could have, I know my husband got me like Pedialyte, and he got me different juices, I couldn't drink any of that. I think it had too much flavor. So the only thing that I could have in my previous pregnancy was Zamzam water. I don't know why, but it gave me the ability to have maybe just like a cup of water a day. But I didn't have any access to that in this pregnancy. The only thing, surprisingly, that I could have was 1 to 2 cans of Coke. I don't even like Coke, but for some reason, I feel like Coke is the only thing that kind of helped me through those first few weeks, because I would have 1 to 2 cans of Coke every single day, and I think that kept like my body running and kept me from getting dehydrated. Now I can't have Coke because it reminds me of pregnancy and what I was going through. I think one of the hard parts when you're going through a 4th pregnancy or even a 3rd pregnancy with hyperemesis gravidarum is as soon as that the hyperemesis hits, you kind of have that PTSD from your previous pregnancies. So when mine hit this time, I felt like I've been nauseous forever, like for months and months at a time, because it's like it never ended and there was no in between. And then I worked out actually that I was bedridden for 12 months of my adult life, basically almost 3 months in every pregnancy. That's kind of scary, and it's kind of a crazy pill to swallow, that 1 year of my adulthood was spent laying in bed sick. Something else that I really couldn't handle was toothpaste. I hated the smell of toothpaste, and I hated using toothpaste, which is tough because toothpaste, the minute you put it in your mouth and you'd brush, I'd be left with a taste of toothpaste for the next few hours. I think there's like a coating, and I don't know what happens to your saliva when you're pregnant, but that coating would like literally just sit on my teeth, and it would make me feel so nauseous. Signing forms for my kids for school was also another challenging area. I couldn't write, and I know it sounds weird, but I couldn't write. Like, my writing looked icky, and it takes energy to do this. And that's energy that you kind of don't have. You have the energy to throw up, but that action, I don't know what it is about it, and there's no explanation. I'm just telling you how I felt. And writing, I couldn't drive, could barely function, could barely stand, could barely get up from my bed. I couldn't read books to my kids. I could barely talk to my kids. There was a point in my pregnancy during week 7, I'd say, until week 15 to 16, where all I would say to the kids was, mm-mm, mm-hmm, mm-mm. The same thing with my husband. So I think that for those 3 months of my pregnancy, they were really lonely. I was lonely too. My husband had to learn how to do everything in the house. He actually learned how to cook, which he never knew how to do before. But what was more interesting is he couldn't cook in the house because the smell of food could literally send me immediately, like within 0.3 seconds, I'd be straight into the restroom throwing up whatever I had in my stomach, and even what I didn't have in my stomach. So he would go outside and he used the Instant Pot, and it was hot outside. It was very hot, and I don't know how he did it, but he just needed to help me get through. So he learned how to make curry, he learned how to make the foods the kids liked, pastas, anything that we could eat. But the problem was curry smell would go right up my window, and then if the window wasn't closed, I'd start throwing up. So I could even smell it from the outside. If my neighbor was barbecuing, I could smell it, and I would immediately see my kids run upstairs and quickly come and close the window and say, "No, Dad said he smells barbecue." But most of the time, I could actually smell the barbecue like 10 minutes before everyone else could. My kids were missing Indian food, which is what we normally eat at home. I could not handle the smell of it. It would stay in the air for at least maybe like a day. So it's funny because when I got further into my pregnancy, my son actually was able to make chicken curry. So when I'd go for a doctor's appointment, he'd call my husband, he'd be like, "Okay, I'm starting." And he'd actually put up the chicken curry and try to get it done and cooked before I got back from my appointment. And then I'd walk in and I'd be like, "Ooh, what is that smell?" But the benefit was it kind of happened more later in my pregnancy. versus at the beginning when I was really, really struggling with the smell. I think I had strong smell though throughout my whole pregnancy. Another struggle for my son was he loved popcorn. I could not handle the smell of popcorn because that butter smell would literally stay in the room for 3 days. So I told him he can have air pop popcorn or I could leave the house, but at that point I really wasn't able to leave the house. So I think for my whole 9 months he did not really have popcorn, but now he has popcorn and he's happy because it doesn't make me sick anymore. You know, some people think that you're exaggerating and you can function. And you know, some people are like, oh, I had nausea in my pregnancy and I was able to work. If you had hyperemesis, there's no way you can work unless you're getting medicated or unless your hyperemesis is very mild. I wouldn't even say mild. My hyperemesis is severe, but yet there's no way I would have been able to hold up a real job during that time. You're just too sick. You can barely stand. You can barely have conversations. You can't probably even add 2 + 2 at that point. You're so emotionally fried, physically fried, brain fried. You couldn't have worked in that state unless it was milder than what I had, I suppose. So at my level of hyperemesis, no, I could not have worked. I literally was either on the couch or in my bed. And it's really boring for a busybody like me. I like to be active and I like to move around the house and take walks outside. I couldn't do any of that. Showers would be 1 at the most 2 minutes before I would feel faint and like I'm gonna pass out. And the only way I could shower was if my husband was home and he was nearby. So in case I fell or in case I was not feeling good, he could help me pretty quick. Being in bed is really, really boring. For that much time, it is boring to sit in bed. And there's only so much you can sleep. I would get sometimes relief in my sleep, which is good because I dreamed that I could eat food or I could drink water, and then I'd wake up and I wouldn't be able to do any of that. It was a really, really difficult time. And I'm really glad that I'm past it. You know, you think you can sit in bed and scroll through Instagram. Do you have any idea how many pictures of food were on my Instagram feed any day? I would literally be scrolling and then all of a sudden food, and then I'd feel like throwing up. Nothing looked appealing. Everything looked like it was gonna make me throw up. So I had to stay off Instagram for a while. I thought that I'd have time to, you know, catch up on TV show. In that first 10 weeks of pregnancy, the TV made me nauseous. So no, I couldn't watch TV. You know, towards the middle and end of my pregnancy, TV was fine, but during my main time of hyperemesis, no, it was difficult. I wouldn't have been able to watch TV. I could barely text message. I was basically just living inside of me and just trying to get through the next day and the next hour. Very unsupported by doctors and the healthcare system in America. You know, insurance is really difficult here and they want to do things their way and they want you to take specific medications the way they want it to be taken. And you know, it's a very generalized, you know, to the book kind of thing. And they don't really listen, I feel like, to the patient. And that's what I think is lacking in America. Whereas in South Africa, I do feel the doctors listen to the patient. They listen to how you feel. Health insurance finally approved home health, which is IV fluids. But this ended up being around 17 weeks pregnancy. And by that point, I was starting to feel a little bit better, and I didn't think that it was the right time to start it. They wanted me to do that, like take the IV drips, but also start on a medication that you basically push into your stomach, and it is a timed release. Then it will give you medication at regular intervals. At 17 weeks, I didn't feel like I needed that because I had gone through the most difficult part. Maybe if that was approved at 10 weeks or 11 weeks or 12 weeks, maybe at that point I'd be okay with it, but not at 17 weeks. I know from my previous pregnancies how my body handles pregnancy, when it starts, when the hyperemesis kind of eases off. In this pregnancy, it went, you know, almost 9 months, but it did definitely ease down 40% at around 18 to 19 weeks. And if you look at my previous YouTube video, I did a picnic for my pregnancy announcement where I threw a beach picnic. So I hired a company to throw a beach picnic for us, and this was my celebration to my kids and to myself that I got through it. And it was a thank you to my kids and to my husband for such a for being there for me and for going through what I know must have been a very difficult time in their lives too, because they're used to a very hands-on mom, and mom kind of disappeared for a good 2 to 3 months at least. I know in most cases of hyperemesis gravidarum, medication is something that has to be taken. I did try medication in one of my previous pregnancies, and I didn't feel the relief that I wanted. And so my husband and I both felt that, if I had the ability to stay in bed and I didn't have that much responsibility out of the kids, then we could make it work without going on to different medications. That doesn't mean I suggest that for you. It just means that I know what I was capable of and what responsibilities I had, and I was able to do it without medications. But I don't have that experience of taking it with medications, and if I was sitting at the hospital all the time, I for sure would have definitely looked into taking medications. But I think my severity wasn't as terrible. While it was completely debilitating to my body and to my day-to-day, I was still able to fight through that, and I didn't need to be able to work. I know some people that have hyperemesis gravidarum can take medication and then they can go back to work, which if I was in that situation, then I probably would have taken medication. But at this point, I did not need to. I went for weeks without having a phone conversation. I don't think I talked to my mom on the phone for a good few weeks. I was literally on my own, struggling through every day and just trying to get by. It became a fight of just surviving. And that's what I think hyperemesis gravidarum is for somebody that does go through it. You're just trying to survive and make it through. And I know when you're in the midst of it, you think, oh my God, how am I going to get through one more week of this? How am I going to get through another month of this? Oh wow, I have 9 months of this. How do I get through? And you just have to. You think that you cannot survive this. How can anyone survive this? But somehow you do. You fight through, and your body can get really weak and really tired, and you survive. And you need to talk to your doctors. If it gets really, really bad, you do need to go to the hospital. If you are throwing up so much and you are super dehydrated, you need to be going to the hospital. Surprisingly, as a C-section mom, I actually looked forward to my deliveries versus being pregnant, because as painful as a C-section is afterwards, it is nothing compared, it's not even a tenth of the pain that you feel as a woman with hyperemesis gravidarum. The one good thing is you do take notice of things other people might not notice. Like, I was driving the other day and I was so happy that I could drive. And I know a 16-year-old is happy that they can drive too, but I physically wasn't able, I was not capable of it. So I found a new appreciation for that. And sometimes when I brush my hair, or sometimes when I'm just walking around my kitchen, I'm so happy and excited that I can do this, that I'm capable of this, and that I've come so far. So you really kind of see the worst extreme of something, like not being able to brush your hair and not barely being able to move and talk, and then finding that new appreciation of, look, I can make a video like this and I can talk to you. You probably wouldn't even notice that. Or somebody that didn't have hyperemesis gravidarum wouldn't even think of that. But I do. The fact that I can talk to you today and tell you my story with so many words is something I appreciate. People don't realize that they take small things for granted in life. And when you can no longer do them, you really see your blessing and that ability and how special and amazing it is that you can do these things. I can drink water again. I can use toothpaste again with no problems. Sometimes people say really hurtful things to women suffering from hyperemesis gravidarum. And it's not nice because you don't really understand it and you don't understand the severity. And sometimes the things that you say make people feel like you're not understanding, and it just makes us feel more lonely. So, a small thing like eat ginger and crackers. Okay, obviously I would have eaten ginger and crackers. Firstly, ginger, just thinking of ginger makes me feel like throwing up because it reminds me of hyperemesis the first time. And I tried the crackers and nope, crackers didn't want to stay down. Obviously I tried that. I want a good and easy pregnancy too. but it wasn't just morning sickness or evening sickness. It was literally 24-hour sickness. I could sometimes wake up in the middle of the night and need to throw up because it was so bad. Sometimes people say, oh, it's all in your head, you're thinking negatively. No, it's not negative. I love being a mom. I love babies. I love children. If you haven't seen Fun with Mama's YouTube videos or Instagram or my blog, I love children. Why would I want to have a difficult pregnancy? I would love to be having that blissful pregnancy, where everything is peaceful and I'm just enjoying the benefits of pregnancy, like the baby kicking and the beautiful hair and the beautiful skin. I would want that. Why wouldn't I want that? So why would it be in my head and I'm trying to make myself sick? I don't want to be sick. My pregnancies are by far the most difficult thing that I have ever gone through. I did suffer from postpartum preeclampsia this pregnancy, which I may talk about. I'm not sure if that's something you want to hear about, but even then, I think Hyperemesis Gravidarum and my pregnancies and bringing my children into the world throughout those 9 months is probably the most difficult thing that I've ever been through. It feels like a war zone, feels like death, and it is really challenging, but I'm glad that I got through it. I'm glad that Hyperemesis Gravidarum did not prevent me from having 4 children, which is what I wanted. I know that some people, when they start getting those symptoms of Hyperemesis Gravidarum, they just can't go on. It's too hard. So they don't have more pregnancies, and it's understandable because it is that difficult. But I'm glad that, the severity of mine wasn't that intense where it physically put me in that much danger that I would be hospitalized on the brink of death or anything like that. I also think that I love my children that much more fiercely and I appreciate them that much more. And every time I spend a moment with them, I always think, wow, I went through that for you. And I think that's kind of one of the hard things about Hyperemesis Gravidarum too, is you've never met the child because the child is still developing. But if you go back and you tell me, oh, would you go through that for Diana? Yes, in a heartbeat. Would I go through that for Elena? Yes, in a heartbeat. But when you're pregnant, you've never met the baby yet. So it's kind of hard to get to that point of understanding and to make yourself feel better of that. It's surprising because when I was pregnant, actually, in the time of hyperemesis between 6 weeks and 17 weeks, I didn't even like looking at babies because I was just suffering so much in my own self. And it's weird and surprising because I love babies. I love the smell of a newborn and I love hugging them and kissing them and enjoying that. If you're suffering from Hyperemesis Gravidarum right now, I know that there's nothing I can say that's going to make you feel better. I can tell you that I understand what you're going through, but there's nothing really that I can say or do that's going to make it feel better. You just have to get through it, try your best, be strong, and I promise you it's worth it. Your baby is worth it. You get such a gift at the end of it. And looking at other people's babies that, women who had Hyperemesis Gravidarum and that suffered through it, look at their babies. And that is that motivation. And that helped me. So when I was fine looking at babies around like 14, 15 weeks, I actually started looking at pictures of babies. There is 2 great Hyperemesis Gravidarum groups on Facebook where women talk about their symptoms, how they feel, and they show you their baby afterwards. Don't forget to check me out on Instagram. I am at Fun with Mama. Right now I'm currently breastfeeding and enjoying every moment of having a baby. I do have sleepless nights. Elena is not the best sleeper, but I get so many cuddles and I get the best hugs and the best kisses and the best smiles. She smells amazing. I'm so glad that my smell has returned to normal. I'm able to cook again. I'm able to eat Indian food. I thought at one point that I would never be able to eat Indian food, but the minute the baby is born, you feel that relief. I don't know what it is, but I promise once the baby's born, it goes away. As much as you're feeling, delivery pain, for me it was C-section pain. It's all eased at that point. Bye.